All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our virtual summer series. My name is Jacqueline Benson, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm the director of AIT Phoenix, and I will turn it over to our lovely guest today to give a little intro and to get us rolling.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Can you hear me okay? Great, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Wells, and I am a Feldenkrais practitioner. Some of you may have heard of the Feldenkrais method, or maybe not. It's a method that's been around for decades now, developed by a man named Moshe Feldenkrais, but then passed down through several generations of teachers and practitioners. And I feel so lucky to be able to be with you tonight to share this method that I hold very dearly with all of you. I want to thank Jacqueline, and I want to thank AIT and Kate and Garrett for inviting me. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about the method, but then I find the best way to learn more about the method is to just experience it. So I will talk a little bit, and then I will teach a lesson, and you are welcome to join in as you desire. So the Feldenkrais method, as I said, was developed by Moshe Feldenkrais in the 60s and 70s, the 1960s and 70s, which feels like a very long time ago. It really, if you know anything about it, it often falls into the realm of somatic practice. But Moshe really talked about it and viewed it as a self-learning methodology. So really developing a method that helps you cultivate this innate sense that you have, that I have, that we all have as humans, to teach ourselves and to change ourselves through growing our possibilities. So there are often benefits of relaxation benefits of more mobility, etc. But Moshe really framed it as a self-learning method. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind, in your sensation, as you're doing the lesson. There are two modes of the Feldenkrais method. There's a one-on-one hands-on mode called functional integration. And then there's the mode I'll be sharing with you tonight, and it's called awareness through movement. And both of the modes are developed in service of cultivating a deeper, fuller internal awareness of yourself. And obviously, awareness through movement, as the title suggests, is developing that awareness through sequential movements that tonight I will lead, and you are welcome to participate in. So before we get into the lesson, there's also, I want to share some principles or guidelines of doing an awareness through movement lesson, because it might be a little bit different from what you've experienced before. If you've ever taken choreography classes or yoga classes, there's definitely a lot of overlap, but Feldenkrais has its own distinct set of principles or guidelines to follow. So the first is that I'm going to be leading you verbally, but I don't demonstrate anything. And the reason for that is because it's really about you being in your own experience of interpreting my movement proposals and being in your sensation of what they feel like in yourself, in your body. So there's really no need, once we start the lesson, to look at the screen or watch me, because I'm just going to be sitting here talking. You're certainly welcome to watch me, but there won't be a lot going on. And there's no need to watch anybody else. So it's not about attaining any perfect position or doing anything the right or correct way. It's really about a series of movement proposals that spur your own attention and awareness and curiosity about how you do something. So getting into the how you do in an awareness through movement lesson, we take an approach of moving very slowly. We also take an approach of looking for simple, easy, light movement. And then oftentimes I'll ask you to do a movement proposal, and I'll ask you to keep that movement proposal within a really small range of movement. Or you could think of it as a really absolutely comfortable range of movement. So we're really not interested in pushing the limits of range where you get into stretching or where you feel that edge. We're really interested in staying slow, simple, and small. And the reason for that is Moshe Feldenkrais thought that those were the optimum conditions for learning. That your nervous, what we're trying to do in an awareness through movement lesson is really quiet as much noise that your nervous system is taking in, so you can really focus in on how you're doing something without a lot of distraction. So moving slowly, moving simply, and within a small range. And of course, I'll be reminding you of these things throughout the lesson. So no need to retain all of this right now. I just wanted to set it up for you before we get going. And so you get an idea of the vibe of an awareness through movement lesson. So I also mentioned this a little bit, but we're really prioritizing a curiosity in yourself, in what's grabbing your attention, as opposed to or over some idea of correctness. Okay, so nobody's going to be judging you, nobody's going to be analyzing your movement, and hopefully you won't be judging yourself either. That we're all coming from different places, different experiences, different backgrounds, and so how you interpret a movement proposal might be very different from someone else, and that's the point. The point is to understand more deeply and more fully how you put movement together. Another thing that's really key, which relates to this quieting the noise of the nervous system, is to avoid pain. Avoid pain at all cost. So if I ever propose something to you that doesn't feel good, or I ask you to be in a position that doesn't feel good or right, or is uncomfortable, feel free to move out of that position, to create a variation, to pause and rest. And again, that's in service of this tapping into this ability of your nervous system to learn. And if you're only experiencing pain, you're going to miss a lot of information that these movement sequences have to offer you. So, no pain. This is not a no pain, no gain method. Okay. In fact, it's the opposite. If you're feeling pain, you're probably gaining less of what the method has to offer and what you have to offer yourself. Feel free to, again, experiment and explore. So, looking for variations. If something feels uncomfortable, try it a different way. If you want to stay in something longer than I propose, go ahead. You're really guiding I'm guiding the class, but you're really guiding your experience in the class. And what I like to say is, in an awareness through movement lesson, I want to give you the agency to conform the lesson to you and where you're at, as opposed to you conforming yourself to the lesson. So always, and that's a part of cultivating an awareness of when you've done too much, when you're full, when you've had your fill, that you have complete agency to deviate from whatever I'm offering, because that's a big part of learning is knowing your limits, knowing when you need to adjust, change, stop. One other aspect that we use a lot in Feldenkrais is the power of imagination. Moshe talks about imagination as being perhaps the smallest possible movement, is just imagining it or thinking it through. So I'll employ that in this lesson this evening, but also, again, if you're feeling discomfort or pain or can't figure out quite what I mean by a movement proposal, you can always feel free to just imagine it. And that often can be as powerful, if not more powerful, than actually physically doing the movement, because the muscles are still stimulated in imagining, the same muscles that get stimulated in actually doing a movement. So, and oftentimes you can get much more refined about where a movement is starting from, where its impulse is. So we'll use that tonight as well. And then finally, a big component of this method is this idea of rest. So I will propose many times throughout the lesson this evening moments to rest. And oftentimes, as you'll see, we're not doing very strenuous movement. So it's often not a rest for your body or your muscles, but it can often be a rest for your attention. This method often asks you to be really, really focused, and use your attention very specifically and your focus very specifically. So the rest gives you a chance to let your mind wander, to let your attention be diffuse. It's also moments to check in and do comparisons throughout the lesson, to see what's changing, how your perception of yourself is changing over the course of, usually lessons are 45 minutes to an hour. So those are some principles or guidelines as we go through the lesson tonight. Of course, I will keep reminding you of them. And also I'm providing proposals for you to and a container with which in which for you to explore your own sense of self, your own sense of movement sequencing. So feel free to make it yours, to make the lesson yours. Okay, so let's get started. And what I want to do is, if you could start in standing. We'll be lying down for most of the lesson, but start in standing to begin with. And yeah, don't worry about me seeing you. Yeah, that's okay. And we often start a lesson with a reference movement. And so just find yourself standing, feel your weight over your 2 feet, and just do a movement without moving your feet as if you wanted to see something behind you. So just look one direction behind you, and just see how you do that. Yep. And then come back and look the other way. And do that a few times. And as you do that, just get an impression of how that movement is happening in you, a sense of which parts are moving. I'm asking you to look. So do your eyes lead? Does your head lead? Does your pelvis lead? And maybe in your space, just get a sense for how far you can see behind you, right and left. And is it the same? Is it the same, or is one side a little more available? And also, if you remember, do you remember which side you turned to first? And oftentimes our nervous system will go toward the easy side, or a side that we often bias ourselves toward what is easy. So just notice if you remember which side you turned to first, and if that is true for you, if you have a sense that one side is a little easier or more available. Good. And then once you're facing forward again, you can pause this movement, and we'll just return to that at the end of the lesson, and you can do a little temporal comparison. So now find yourself lying on your back. Find a place in your space to lie on your back. Thank you. That's great. That's great. And just right away, notice how you chose to arrange yourself. So where did you put your arms and your hands? What are the arrangement of your legs? Are your eyes open or closed? And again, there's no need to make any changes right now, but just notice how you spontaneously landed. And then also notice if this position you spontaneously landed in, if it's comfortable. Do you feel, and what do I mean by comfortable? Well, that you're not experiencing any pain. And that maybe another way you could think about comfort is that you could be in this position for a few minutes. And as you contemplate that, maybe you want to switch something. Maybe you want to move your arms or change the position of your legs if they're long. Maybe you prefer them, your knees bent and your feet standing, or maybe you are happy here. And that's great. So what I'd like to do with an intro to Feldenkrais class is sort of take you through a little mini study of some of those guidelines that I talked about before we get into the lesson. So let's start by doing that. So now just roll to your front side. So just roll over to your front. And once you get there, notice how you spontaneously arrive and notice if that's the most comfortable or if you'd like to do something to make it more comfortable. Maybe you want to change the position of your head or bend a knee. Notice the position of your arms. Yeah, and just take a moment to find comfort on your front. And some of you might be front sleepers, so this might be a very comfortable position for you. And if you're not a front sleeper, this might be a little more challenging. So what do you have to do to arrange yourself to make this as comfortable as possible? And then once you've found a place that you could, in theory, rest in for several minutes, then bring yourself back onto your backside. So return to your backside. And when you arrive there, just notice if you chose the same place to land, or if somehow by rolling onto your front, that reorganized something in how you lie on your back. Maybe your arms or hands are different. Maybe your legs are different. Maybe you're starting to sense different things, different parts of you making contact with the floor. So just do a little comparison between when you first got down on your back and now. And then just remember back, and it was just a minute ago, but do you know how you got from your backside to your front side? And just think about it. You don't have to recreate anything. So you could start by asking yourself if you know which direction you turned. Did you turn to the right? Did you turn to the left? And maybe you don't know, and that's absolutely fine. But if you do know, or if you are remembering, maybe you remember, did you start moving with your arm? Did you start by bending a knee? Just see what you can recall. And again, if you can't recall anything, that's absolutely fine. So now I'm going to ask you to roll onto your front side again, but this time I want you to do it much more slowly than you did it the first time. So maybe go at most half as fast, if not slower. And notice as you roll from your backside to your front side, moving more slowly now, if you have a sense of being able to track what you're doing a little more easily. So go ahead and start a slower movement of rolling from your back to your front. And as you do, yeah, just notice what happens first, what happens next, which direction you're rolling, how you're getting leverage, what you're pushing off of to roll your torso. Good. And then once you arrive on your front side, again, notice if you chose the same position to return to, or if something has changed. Or maybe you're in the same position, but you have a different internal sense, or there's a different quality to it, or something has softened or lengthened. There's maybe a little more sense of ease, or more parts of you or different parts of you in contact with the floor. And then now we're going to add something else as you return to your back. So not only are you going to move slowly, but can you add in this idea of moving as easily or as simply as possible? So, another way you could think of it is with the minimum amount of effort. So when you're ready, bring yourself onto your back, moving slowly and as simply as possible. So what needs to move and what can just go along for the ride? Nice. Nice. So good. And then again, just notice how you landed. If you landed in a comfortable position, and if not, how you might adjust to make things a little more comfortable. And then another element is this doing movements in a small range. So what I'm going to ask next is that you not only move slowly and simply, but you just do, say you just do the first quarter of rolling from your backside to your front side. And so start that, and you might only get, you might only get partially onto your side. And then once you get a quarter of the way through that movement, just reverse it and go back to lying on your back. So just starting a slow and simple movement of beginning to roll onto your front side. But then when you get, I don't know, once you do the first few steps, just pause, yeah, and roll back onto your back. So don't go all the way to your front side. And just see what it's like to reverse the movement. And maybe do that a few times. And each time you do it, each time you start to move, roll to one side, and then pause and come back, just see if you can place your attention on some different part of you. So maybe the first time it's on what's initiating the movement. Maybe the next time you focus on your breathing. Or maybe you change it up. Maybe one time you use your leg to push. Maybe another time you initiate from your arm or your shoulder or your head. Nice. Very good. So yeah, the next time you find yourself lying on your back, just pause there. And now just think back to what you were doing moments ago, just the start, the beginning of the movement of rolling onto your front. And just start to imagine that movement. But now, if you were rolling to your left side, now imagine doing that movement to your right. And just imagine starting the movement. And of course, if you were going to your right, imagine going to your left now. So just imagine how it starts, what comes along. And then you get a quarter of the way there, and then imagine yourself pausing and coming back, reversing the movement. And just imagine that a few times if it's possible. And then when you're ready, just try it once. Just try once rolling in the other direction. And again, not all the way, just a quarter of the way. And just see how that is. Roll the other direction and come back. Good. And then take a rest. Find that comfortable place on your back again. And maybe check into your breathing. And if you want, if you haven't already been, you can close your eyes. Of course, you can leave them open if that's more comfortable. But oftentimes when we're doing this type of work where we're bringing our intention internally, or sometimes that's called our ability to interocept, or to use our interoception as opposed to our exteroception, perceiving things outside of us. We're using our abilities to perceive things that are happening inside of us. Sometimes it's helpful to close your eyes since often many of us are very visually dominant. So if you close your eyes, that can often heighten or highlight other senses. So now, lying on your back, just start to roll your head in this easy, simple, small, slow way, just to one side. Just roll it a little bit to one side and back to the middle. And notice which side you roll toward, right or left, and then roll to the other side. And just roll your head back and forth a few times. And see if you can bring your attention to track the pressure on that point on the back side of your head that's making contact with the floor. And notice as you roll your head to the right and roll your head to the left, if you can start to sense that pressure as making a line along the floor. And if you can attune to that, notice if the line, what kind of shape the line has. Is it a straight line, left and right? Or maybe it arcs a little bit downward as you get to the right and the left, or maybe it arcs upward. Just notice as you roll your head back and forth if it inscribes a line, and if you can sense what type of line it's inscribing on the floor. And then pause. And without changing your breath at all, just bring your attention to your breathing and see if you notice as you inhale and exhale, if there's any movement happening in your ribs behind your back ribs. So those ribs making contact with the floor. Do you sense any movement happening there? And maybe you do, and maybe you don't. But just take a moment to bring your awareness to that part of you. And this can be, if you haven't already gathered, it can be quite relaxing work that oftentimes these lessons have a tendency to bring you into a parasympathetic state, a kind of a resting, digesting, relaxing state. And so if you fall asleep, no problem. That's very common, especially for people who are just discovering the method. As you fall asleep, wake back up, rejoin, and again, there's no wrong way to do it. And it's really about honoring yourself and doing what feels right and comfortable for you in the moment. So roll your head again side to side, and this time make it even slower and make it even smaller. So maybe go half as far in twice the time compared to what you were doing before. And just check in with, as you do that, slower and smaller, if it starts to highlight different things about how you're doing it. Maybe parts of your neck, the pressure of your head on the floor. Maybe you even sense parts of your spine lower down somehow involved, albeit maybe in very tiny ways. And then pause your head and bend your knees and stand your feet so that the soles of your feet are on the floor and your knees are pointed up toward the ceiling. And once you get to that position of your knees bent and your feet standing, just go ahead and do a similar thing as to what you were doing with your head. Begin to tilt your knees in one direction and bring them back to the middle. And notice what direction you went in first, and then tilt them in the other direction. And go back and forth like this a couple times, tilting your knees to the right and to the left. And just notice as you do that slowly, and again, not going to your end range, but stopping well before where you can't go any further. Notice what's happening in your pelvis. If you sense your pelvis rolling a little, being influenced by your knees, your legs kind of serving as big handles or levers on the pelvis. And maybe you even notice a little rolling or tilting in your lumbar spine, your spine just headward of your pelvis. Good. And then the next time your knees are pointed up toward the ceiling, leave them there. And then see if you can do them, this tilting movement of your knees, your legs, even slower and even smaller. So go half the distance in twice the amount of time compared to what you were just doing before. And notice how this different change of tempo and change of range, how it gives you an opportunity to notice some things about yourself that you might not notice in your normal day-to-day movement. That oftentimes you're probably not moving this slowly or smallly or in such a small way with any attention. Perhaps you move this small when you're sleeping or in other moments when you're focused on something else. So then pause that and lengthen your legs. Take a rest. A chance to let your attention drift. You don't need to put it anywhere specifically. And then when you're ready, roll to your front side. And maybe you notice how you roll to your front side. And again, once you get there, notice if you chose the same position of your head and arms, legs. And of course, this position that you ended up in and all positions you end up in kind of spontaneously are really dependent on your life history, your experiences, your particular anatomy. So some people would be attracted to certain positions on their front and more than others. And just notice which side you turned your head to, or maybe you're resting on your forehead, but just slowly change the position of your head and see if you can move slowly enough that you can find a way to position it in a different place in a relatively comfortable way, even if it's not the most comfortable. And then see also how you've arranged your arms. Maybe some of you have your arms up near your head. Others might have their arms down by their sides, or maybe a combination of the two, one arm up, one arm down. And just make a different choice with your arms. How would you bring your arms so they could both be down by your sides or both up near your head? Just slowly make an adjustment and see if you can find a way to be comfortable in multiple positions. And then turn your head again. And as you do it, notice the pathway. As you turn your head from one side to the other while you're lying on your front, do you kind of pass right through the middle so that the tip of your nose grazes along the floor? Or maybe you bring your chin away from your throat so that you look up a little bit to turn the head. Or maybe you bring the chin closer to your throat and kind of drag your forehead along the floor. Just notice what you do as you move your head slowly back and forth. And then see if you can arrange yourself in this way, in a relatively comfortable fashion, which is to have your right hand on the floor and then put your left hand on top of your right hand around the level of your head, and then see if you can put your forehead on top of the left back hand, or the back of your left hand. So see if you can have a little stacking of your two hands, right hand, then left hand, and then your forehead. And once you get there, while you're still on your front, go ahead and bend your knees so that your feet, the soles of your feet, are facing the ceiling. And then in this position, again, with this very slow, small movement, just start to tilt your legs, your lower legs, just to the right. Your legs and feet a little to the right and back to the middle, and a little to the right again and back to the middle. And so you did this while you were lying on your back. So check out how it is to do it while you're lying on your front, tilting to the right and back. And of course, a major difference is that your feet are not in contact with anything. But also notice your pelvis. So now the front side of your pelvis and the front sides of your hips are toward the floor, maybe making contact with the floor. So just notice as you tilt your legs to the right, how that tilts your pelvis or has an influence on your pelvis. And maybe even an influence on parts of your spine above your pelvis or headward of your pelvis. Good. And then bring your legs down and find a way to rest in comfort. And if you can do that while staying on your front side, do. For some of you, it might mean rolling to a side or rolling to your back. And if that's the case, do that. But find a comfortable way to rest. So again, there's this idea that if you're uncomfortable, you might be missing some details of your experience. So these lessons are really a chance to get to know yourself in maybe unusual ways, and giving yourself the time to get to know yourself in a way that you maybe wouldn't normally spend the time doing. So there are thousands of these awareness through movement lessons that Moshe Feldenkrais developed and other practitioners developed. So this is just one of many, and each lesson is designed to speak to a different part or a different sequence of parts or connection of parts. And so something to think about is what this lesson is speaking to. And of course, how it's speaking to you will be very different than how it's speaking to others. So again, no absolute right answer, only what is coming to you. So still on your front, stack your hands in that way so that your right palm is on the floor, left palm is on the back of the right hand, and then your forehead is on top of your stacked hands. And now bend your knees again and have your knees about hip width apart, or maybe a little bit more. And in this position with your knees apart, bring your feet together. So tilt your lower legs so that your feet come together in the middle and that you feel maybe the inside edge of each foot against each other. And then in this position, start to do a tilting of your legs, again, just to the right and back to the middle. But this time, as you tilt your legs to the right, allow the left inside edge or the inside edge of your left foot to kind of slide down your right leg, the inside edge of your right leg. So that as you tilt, your left foot stays in contact with some part of your right lower leg or foot the whole time. And go back and forth like that, slowly, simply, not needing to use a lot of force or a lot of effort. Just letting them tilt to the right and back. And many times like that. And you've already done this once with your feet apart. So what's different about having your feet together and having your left foot kind of trace or track down your right leg? Does it speak to your pelvis in a different way? Maybe it speaks up your spine in a different way. And then pause that and again, lengthen your legs. Take a pause, take a rest. And again, prioritizing your comfort. So if that means coming out of lying on your front, do. Coming to your side or your back. Maybe bending up a knee or changing the position of your head or arms. And checking in with this arrangement. Are you finding yourself going back to the same arrangement over and over, or are things changing? Are you finding different ways to be comfort, or is the movement that you're doing necessitating a different arrangement in order to be comfortable? And then once again, come back to that position of your hands on your front side, left hand on top of the right. And then this time, bring your head to turn so you're looking to the left. So your right cheek is on your stacked hands. And bring your legs back into that position they were just in. So knees bent, hip width apart, and feet touching along the midline. And then in this position with your head turned now looking to the left, start to tilt your feet, lower legs to the right. And just notice, having your head turned to the left like this, how this movement of tilting your legs to the right, how it speaks up your spine differently. Or maybe you notice different movement in your waist or in your ribs. Give yourself permission to move your attention around as you do this small, slow movement of tilting your legs to the right and back, to see what's showing up. And how does this head turn to the left alter something about the movement? Good. And then once you've done that a few times, pause and everyone come roll onto your back and take a little longer rest. Just notice if you are getting a new impression of yourself, of your internal landscape in this position on your back. And go ahead and roll your head back and forth a little bit, right and left, or left and right. And notice if you still have a preference, if you had a preference before, if you still have that same preference, or maybe something's getting easier or you're moving with a different quality. Good, and then pause that. And then roll again to your front side, easily, slowly, making these transitions from one side to the other also a part of the lesson. And when you get there, again, stack your hands in the same way. So right hand and then left hand on top of right. And then this time, bring your head to look to the right so that your left cheek is resting on your stacked hands. And bring your legs into that position of knees hip width apart, knees bent, and inner edges of the feet touching along the midline. And now this is maybe a little bit of a stronger twist. So go really easy as you start to tilt your legs again to the right. And go small. And stay in that easy range and start to notice what is the influence of this movement and how it travels up your spine when having your head turned to the right. And really staying in an easy range. And often you'll find in Feldenkrais lessons that staying in that easy range and expanding that easy range slowly is sometimes more effective than really pushing to the edge. And as you continue to tilt your legs to the right, just notice how your waist is responding, or maybe you're starting to sense a little movement in your armpits or in your shoulders. Where is this movement of tilting your legs showing up in other parts of you? How are they getting involved, so to speak? And then roll onto your back, leave that, find a way to roll back onto your back. And when you get there, maybe bring your attention to your upper spine, to that place between your shoulder blades. And notice if you have a different sense of that area. Maybe it's making more contact with the floor now as you lie on your back, a little more pressure. You know, that having your head in these different positions while you're on your front side, on your forehead and turned right and left, and doing these tilting movements of your legs, how it might start to speak into your ribs, your upper spine, your sternum in a new way. Or maybe start to awaken parts of you in those areas that maybe are a little dormant or don't always get involved in your day-to-day movement. And Feldenkrais lessons are also often designed to take you into novel positions that you're not typically in, as a way to re-embody parts of you that maybe have become blank through use or experience, or maybe some sort of trauma, some ways that we protect ourselves. So now, when you're ready, roll again onto your front side. And this time, just put your right cheek on the floor. So looking to the left, and your right cheek is on the floor. And your arms can be just on either side of your head, your hands on either side of your head. And bring your legs together so that from feet all the way up to your upper thighs, they're joined. And then bend your knees while keeping your legs joined like that. And just start to tilt these joined legs to the right. But if you keep the legs together and don't let one leg slide along the other, notice that your left knee starts to depart from the floor pretty quickly as you start to take your legs to the right. And actually, as you go a little bit further, you might find that your whole left thigh starts to lift away from the floor. So just do a few movements of tilting these now connected legs down the midline, from feet all the way to knees to thighs, tilting them to the right. And then pause that and lengthen your legs. And now keep your right cheek on the floor, but this time interlace your hands and place your interlaced hands over your head so that they're maybe holding your head just right above your ear, right above your left ear, if your right cheek is on the floor. So you're kind of creating a little cradle for your head. And then when you're in that position, bring your legs back together and bend your knees. And now this is a little bit of a constraint for your head, having your hands holding your head like this. And your elbows can be rested on the floor. But now start to tilt your knees again to the right, or your legs to the right. And notice now that you're kind of constraining your head with your hands like this, how does the movement transfer up? Does it require some part of your upper spine, maybe the junction between your thoracic spine and your cervical spine, or your torso and your neck, to move in a different way, or to get a little more involved as you tilt the legs to the right and back many times? And then pause that and bring your legs down Bring your hands down, unlace your fingers. Find a comfortable way to rest on your front if you can for a moment or two. And then when you're ready, turn your head so that your left cheek is on the floor and you're looking to the right. And then interlace your fingers again and see if you can interlace them in the other way. So if the first way was your habitual way of interlacing, see if you can interlace them in the non-habitual way. Or another way to think about it is if one thumb was on top when you interlace them the first time, interlace them so that the other thumb is on the top. And then place your interlaced hands over your head, kind of cradling above your ear. And then join your legs and bend your knees. And going very slowly, start to tilt your knees, your legs, your feet to the right. Again to the right. So only going to the right and back to the middle. And here, notice how the movement travels up. Maybe you sense some movement in your elbows, one elbow going a little footward while the other one goes headward. How is the movement traveling up your spine? And then once you've done that a few times, rest, come, roll to your back and rest. So one thing that this lesson is getting at is a twisting in your spine from your tailbone, pelvis, all the way up through your lumbar, thoracic, cervical spine to your head. And so now while you're on your back, just roll your head a few times, left and right, and check in with what's changing, if something's changing. Maybe something's clarifying, and maybe not. If you're new to Feldenkrais, sometimes it takes a few lessons to start to develop a taste for what's going on internally, especially if you're not used to that kind of awareness. And then pause your head in the middle and bend your knees and stand your feet and just do a little tilting of your knees one way and the other. Notice how that's speaking to your pelvis, the lower end of your spine. And then pause that and lengthen your legs again if that's comfortable, and just compare your right side and your left side. So you've been doing a lot of this tilting movement on your front just to the right side, and that's a common tactic in Feldenkrais, to really focus on one side for a long period of time as a way to really develop a contrast, to kind of heighten a difference, because oftentimes that's what we're very good at attuning to or paying attention to, are differences that we perceive. And another reason why we do one side so heavily at the beginning is now we've blazed a trail. So we've done a lot of movement on the right side. So now we can maybe spend a little less time on the other side. And because the left side has already learned something from the right side, even by just being a part of the movement. We can maybe move through the left side a little bit quicker and still find some interesting sensations. So when you're ready, roll to your front. And this time stack your hands in the opposite way. So have your left palm on the floor and your right hand stacked on top of your left. And then put your forehead on top of your stacked hands. And then bend your knees and keep your knees hip width distance apart, and bring your inside edges of your feet together. And this time, before you start to move, just start to imagine the movement of now taking your connected legs, connected at the feet, the inside edges of the feet, taking them to the left. Just imagine it. Pretend that you're doing it. And pretend that you're doing it like you would do the movement normally. You tilt and come back, tilt and come back. And just see if you can conjure up some sense of the movement or some sense of the sequence that you did on the right side, but now on the left, just in your imagination. Or maybe as you imagine it, you just start to feel the initial impulses. Maybe you sense where that movement is originating from or initiating from. And then once you've imagined it a few times, just actually physically do the movement just once. Just tilt the legs to the left and come back, and then lengthen them. And take a brief pause on your front. And then when you're ready, come back and stack your hands again. I may have misspoke the last time, but stack your right hand on top of your left hand. And then this time, put your left cheek on your stacked hands, so you're looking to the right. And again, bring your legs into that position, knees bent and hip width apart. Inside edges of the feet touching along the midline. And again, just imagine a movement of your legs tilting now to the left. And again, just noticing what's possible in this imaginative realm. And then once you've imagined it a couple of times, just do it. Do it once. Letting your legs tilt to the left. This time, the inside edge of your right foot tracing down your lower left leg. And sensing that tilting of your pelvis, twist in your spine. Good. And then pause, lengthen your legs again. Take a few moments. And then when you're ready, come back to it. Arrange your hands in the same way, but this time look to the left so that your right cheek is on your stacked hands. And bend your knees, bring your feet back into that position. Yeah, and in this position with your head now looking to the left or turn to the left, imagine what it would be like to tilt your legs also to the left, and how that might send a twist up your spine from your pelvis, sacrum, through your lumbar, your thoracic spine, and your ribs, how your ribs might respond. And then again, once you've imagined it, just do it once, allowing your legs to tilt to the left, slowly, easily, and coming back. Bring your legs back to the middle and then lengthen them. Pause. And slowly and easily turn your head to face the right. So your left cheek is on the floor. And again, interlace your hands and place them over the top of your head so they're holding or cradling just above your left ear. Sorry, so they're above your right ear because you're looking to the right. And then now do the other version of your legs where you bring your legs together from feet all the way to the tops of your thighs, and bend your knees so your feet are up in the air. And then here, just imagine again, tilting your legs to the left, but now with them joined together like this. Right away as you tilt them to the left, you sense that your right knee lifts. So if you think about keeping your feet, your ankles kind of glued together, that as you tilt, your right knee lifts a little, comes back down. Good, and then pause. And we'll do the final variation when you're ready, if you're ready, which is coming onto your front side again and turning your head to the left, interlacing your fingers and placing your hands over your head, cradling them, creating a little constraint. So your head is between your interlaced hands and the floor, looking left. And your legs are joined together from feet all the way up to the tops of your thighs, knees joined together. And imagine, again, one more time, tilting your lower legs to the left. And think about if your knees were glued together, if this time you didn't let your right foot slide along your left leg, but you kept them all together. And then do a movement of tilting once or twice. And then when you've done that, come and roll to lie on your back. And noticing how you get there, remembering back to all the rolling you did at the very beginning. And noticing, maybe remembering back to the beginning, how you first arrived lying on your back and where you are now. And if you sense any differences, maybe in how you're making contact with the floor, but also maybe in your mood or your breathing. Maybe you feel like the whole of you is in a different state than when you started. And maybe you have words or language to articulate that state to yourself in your head. Or maybe it's inarticulable. Inarticulable. I don't know if that's a word, but you get what I mean. And one more time, roll your head side to side. See how that's coming along. And if you want, bend your knees and stand your feet one more time and tilt your knees left and right a little bit. See how that's coming along. And then at some point, as you're tilting your knees, allow your knees to go all the way to the floor and start to roll to your side. And then slowly and easily start to come to sitting. And eventually from sitting to standing. And the last thing we'll do before you start to do a lot of stretching or adjusting is just feel the weight over your 2 feet, the length of your legs, connecting to your pelvis, and the length of your spine up to the top of your head. And just notice how you are carrying your head on top of your spine. This lesson is sometimes called the carriage of the head. So just notice how your head is riding on top of your spine, which is riding on top of your pelvis and your legs and your feet. And then just go back to that reference movement of looking behind you. And just notice if something has changed about this as you look behind you in one direction and then the other. Do you feel like the quality has changed, or a different part of you is involved? Maybe you can look a little further behind you, right and left. Maybe you have a sense as you twist, you get a little longer. Good. And then take a little walk around. Coming back into a vertical sense of yourself, of gravity, of your environment. And that's where we will end the lesson. I want to thank you so much for coming along on this Intro to Feldenkrais ride with me. And I want to thank AIT again. And I'll just give a little shout out to my website. I'm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but my website is Jeffrey, Jeffrey -Wells, WELLS.com. And you can go on there. I offer Zoom classes, but there's also a link there to the Feldenkrais Guild of North America website, where you can find out a lot more resources about Feldenkrais in your area if you're interested in learning more. And of course, a simple Google of Feldenkrais will bring you to a wealth of lessons that you can try over YouTube and such. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Thank you. Thank you. That was so lovely. Thank you so much. Just little quick AIT announcement for any of our adults who are interested in moving with us in person. Just a reminder that our adult weekend skateaway registration is open through September 1st, and that is our weekend long artistic skating and mindfulness retreat in Austin, Texas. So if anyone has questions about that or is interested in registering, head on over to the AIT website or our social media and just send us a message. And yeah, thank you again, Jeffrey.